Location, location, location. The earliest residents of Venice, a city located in the middle of a lagoon on the northeastern coast of Italy, knew a lot about the unusual place they inhabited in the 5th and 6th centuries. They understood that residing in the lagoon, rather than near it, meant a respite from the constant invasions by Germanic warriors. In fact, its watery perimeter would protect Venice from attack for over 1,000 years. Early Venetians made the most of their complex environment. They built settlements on the highest of the 100-plus islands that make up the contemporary city. They discovered that logs from mainland trees embedded in the sediment and clay of the lagoon floor became petrified from lack of oxygen, and thus formed a solid foundation on which they built homes and churches from wood, brick, and even upcycled marble from the abandoned mainland Roman remains. They dredged canals by hand with no machinery and used the silt to expand existing islands and create new canals, all the while cautiously protecting the existing flow of water. The urban land and seascape assumed its current shape by the mid-14th century. Understanding that maintenance of this balance of land and sea was essential to the survival and flourishing of the city, the emerging Venetian government formed councils and courts to oversee the lagoon ecosystem, to regulate construction along canals and traffic in them, and to dredge and clear waterways for the movement of goods and peoples. The early lagoon settlers also negotiated land and sea for their sustenance, surviving on a steady stream of fish from the waters and waterfowl from the air. They harvested salt, an essential and precious commodity for the preservation of food. The regional salt trade allowed these new Venetians to develop the economy that would transform the sleepy lagoon and its fisherfolk into a cosmopolitan world capital populated with some of the wealthiest men and women in all of Europe who built elaborate churches and gilded palaces filled with art. The salt exchange allowed them to develop trade networks across the Adriatic and beyond, as well as superior navigation and boat-building technology. The Venetian Arsenale was one of the first factories in the world where ships could be built, again by hand, from start to finish. These advantages allowed Venice to control the lucrative spice trade between Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. In short, their unique watery origins gave Venetians the access, means, and wealth to build one of the most beautiful and special cities in the world. Called by 17th century traveler Thomas Coriat, quote, "the most glorious and heavenly show upon the water that any mortal eye ever did see," end quote. Their myths and ceremonies, evolved over centuries and perfected in the Renaissance, reveal how Venetians cultivated a unique sense of place. They appointed as guardians of their city saints, including Nicholas, the patron saint of fishermen, and Mark the Evangelist, around whom they wove a founding legend. Lost in a storm at sea, God guided Mark's boat to the safe harbors of Venice, divinely sanctioning the city's existence and predicting its triumphs. In the 9th century, Venetian sailors stole the relics of Mark from Alexandria in Egypt. The fabulous Basilica of San Marco grew up around them, and the urban space of Venice around it. By the 13th century, religious blessings of the sea had evolved into an elaborate ritual whereby the city's secular leader, the Doge, ritually married the sea by casting a ring into its water, saying, "We espouse you, O sea," as a sign of true and perpetual dominion. This event combined the blessing of the sea, a kind of thanks to God and evocation for the sea to protect and provide for Venetians, with an imperial spin. As a patriarchal society, Venice expressed its control through a marital metaphor over the waters that surrounded its growing empire. This glorious and mythical wonderland nonetheless came with daily and extraordinary challenges of wind and water. The earliest documented acqua grande, big water or flood, today called acqua alta or high water, came in the year 783, though flooding took place long before it occurred to anyone to record it. At least one catastrophic flood occurred every century from the 9th to the 18th. Venetians began adjusting their habitat to confront wind-driven waters as early as the 1300s, constructing sea defenses on the barrier islands that enclosed the lagoon, and raising pavements where the urbanscape had settled into the soft sediment over centuries. Subsidence, or sinking, continues to be a particular problem in and around the Church of San Marco. Archaeology has revealed that the structure has sunk nearly 70 inches since construction, while walkways around it have been raised no fewer than 5 times. For over a millennia, these steps were largely enough to prevent large-scale flood damage. At the same time, Venetians continued to alter the lagoon ecosystem around them in subtle but important ways. Over time, and without intervention, lagoons tend to evolve fully into land or sea. By the 14th century, 7 silt-filled rivers that empty into the Venetian lagoon began its transformation into marshland. The city responded with a robust plan enacted over centuries to redirect these rivers in order to safeguard the watery surroundings that offered it food, transport, trade, protection, culture, and fame. They believed that engineering ingenuity would protect both the wondrous city and their way of life from the caprices of nature. And for many centuries, they were correct. Gradually, as global economic forces shifted away from the Mediterranean, Venetian trade lost its relevance, and the vibrant cosmopolis became a faded relic of a past age, one that 18th century tourists visited only to sample its lingering decadence. However, 20th century industrialization and global geopolitics seem to offer a chance to reverse stagnation and revive Venice as a port and center of industry. The discovery of petroleum in the Middle East literally fueled new machines, transport, and war. Following World War I, this set off a scramble for oil amongst industrialized Western powers, including the newly created nation of Italy. In 1917, the government decided to safeguard the historical center of Venice by building a new port on the nearby mainland. A few years later, chemical plants and an oil refinery were underway. These and other industries required water, which was pumped from aquifers underneath the historic city. In turn, the movement of oil tankers through the barrier islands to the port required broader entrances and deeper channels. Large-scale dredging and widening began. In addition to refashioning itself as a center of modern industry, Venice returned to its roots in the early 20th century, closing off portions of the lagoon for fish farming. At the same time, the historic city languished as industry distracted government from the regular maintenance and upkeep of canals, buildings, and seawalls. These rapid changes had compounding and disastrous effects on the slow evolution of the lagoon already taking place. The pumping of the underground aquifer resulted in the city's accelerated sinking. Industrial waste polluted the waters. Perhaps worst, the widened lagoon entrances allowed water from the Adriatic to enter more quickly. That water had less area to disperse as centuries of silt plus modern construction and fish farming had considerably reduced the basin's total area. This delicate ecosystem lost its ability to flush and renew its waters through the daily tides, and flooding became more frequent and more significant. By the 1950s, the city experienced acqua alta at least 3 times a year, and extreme flooding over 3.5 feet became more common. Despite these warnings, few anticipated the terrifying flood of November 3rd, 1966. Tides were high, rainfall was heavy, and African winds pushed more and more water into the lagoon, destroying the poorly maintained sea barriers and severely eroding the barrier islands. Water submerged 100% of the city, and flood levels reached over 6 feet, taller than most of us, the highest in recorded history. Miraculously, no one in Venice died. Many residents thought this to be a perfect storm, a 100 years flood, 1% probability. But soon thereafter came calls from around Italy and the world to save Venice. Fast forward to July 8th, 2020. Engineers tested a series of 78 floodgates stretching across the 3 access points to the lagoon from the Adriatic. They called this system by the acronym MOSE, Mose, or in English, Moses. The response to 1966 had taken nearly 54 years. Dozens of engineering and ecological studies, and endless squabbling by local, regional, and national governments, as well as private and public partners. The final price tag would be over 6 billion euros. In the preceding half-century, the entire lifetime of this historian, catastrophic flooding has become much more common, with the area around San Marco flooded most days in the winter, and with the flood of November 2019 almost reaching the same level as 1966. Although the pumping of water from beneath the historical center ceased in the 1970s, rising ocean levels from climate change pose a new and less predictable threat. And Mose is neither a permanent solution nor universally accepted amongst residents. Critics, including scientists, historians, and many Venetians, point out that if ocean rise continues at its current pace or accelerates, the Mose gates will be obsolete in less than a century. The cost has been astronomical, with many observers believing the money has paid bribes and kickbacks to favored people and companies from far beyond Venice. And although it successfully stopped one Acqua Alta in November 2020, failure to deploy on December 8th of that year resulted in urban floodwaters of 4 feet, 9 inches. "We thought with Mose, this kind of thing wouldn't happen anymore," said one dejected and damp shopkeeper. Even if Mose worked every time, it cannot stop or reverse existing damage, architectural, ecological, cultural, to the city and its environs. Since the 1950s, the population of Venice has dwindled from 175,000 to 55,000, whereas the tourist population has swelled to 4.7 million visitors annually, adding to environmental challenges. Many of the remaining residents are skeptical of Mose and more supportive of traditional interventions: dredging, raising and repairing salt-scarred buildings, restoring the lagoon's ecosystem, limiting ship and tourist traffic. But these century-old techniques are also costly. It will take further collaboration to solve the wicked problem of saving Venice. In addition to the question of how, increasingly, given costs, we should perhaps also ask why save Venice, and save it for whom? A handful of remaining residents? Millions of tourists? Natural species like dolphins and flamingos returned after a long banishment by humans and industry? Does Venice's past greatness guarantee its future?